Hello, aspiring chefs. This is Food for Thought, where I don't cook from a book. My name is Cris-Jon and today I'm going to be cooking vegan fajitas. What motivated me to start cooking more vegan or with less meat was my second chemo experience from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had found a lot of support in the local area, and one of those support groups is a gardening group, which they have a lot of vegan members in it. So I started to cook more from the garden instead of from a box in the store or from a can. So what we're going to be doing today is a reenactment of one of the vegan potluck dishes that I brought that turned out really well and everybody loved it. So one of the things when it comes to cooking that I do is I only look at the cookbook for suggestions on what sounds good to make, how basic things for how to make a pot roast or how to what's in paella. So I look at the ingredients list. I look at, well, how do you make tortillas or something, and I take it and I adjust it for whatever my current tastes are, because one of the things from the cancer experience that I've been through over the past 10 years is when you're going through chemotherapy, your tastes change. It's kind of like one of the jokes that I tell people, it's kind of like being pregnant. You get these weird cravings, you end up liking things that you never liked before, and so finding new things or making new recipes is just something that I've always been doing my whole life. And although you see a bunch of cookbooks behind me, those are all just for inspiration on, gee, I want to make something Chinese, what sounds good, and then getting myself a bunch of ingredients, throwing it together, and seeing what happens. So today, with the vegan fajitas, here's all the ingredients that we're going to be doing in the recipe today. Here we have bok choy. Actually, the main ingredient instead of a meat is going to be the zucchini. When I had done it before, most of this stuff was out of my garden, which I had a really good crop this year. But and the zucchini that I got was huge. But so this is, so we're going to have the zucchini, but along with it is going to be the bok choy, leek, some onion, bell pepper, serrano, and jalapeno peppers, and the poblano pepper. Now we're going to start preparing the ingredients. Whether or not they are organic, like these are, you really want to wash the vegetables before you cut them up to cook. You never know. You definitely don't want dirt in your food, so you want to wash it off. Not to mention you don't know who's been handling it before you bought it at the store, whether they've had something on their hands or not. So you really just want to wash. So I've already washed these, so I'm just going to start cutting them up. You can cut them however you want for whatever recipe you're doing, and bok choy is something that I've only just started eating since I've been, this past year, and I happen to love it a lot. It just reminds me of celery, and then the leaves end up, the whole thing just tastes good. You can eat the whole thing, really. And what I'm doing with with all of these ingredients is putting them in the bowl in reverse order of what I'm doing, putting them in the pan, because not everything cooks at the same rate while it's cooking in the pan. So you want the stuff that takes longer to go in first, than the stuff that doesn't take hardly any time at all. Now the leaves, they end up getting wilted up in like less than a minute. So you want to throw those in last. Whereas the zucchini takes a while to soften up before it's done cooking. So that's why I organize them in. So I get the leaves out first because they go in last. Cut those off, and then let's see, what goes next? Next is the leek. We'll do the leek. Now, this is another thing that I've just now started eating in the past year or two. It's the leek, which, as you can see, it looks kind of dirty and whatnot because I haven't actually washed it yet now that I think about it. And mainly because when you're cutting up a leek, what I do before I wash it is cut that top part off, which I don't really care to eat. I don't even know if you can. And cutting the bottom off, which is kind of just the root part, and taking off the outer layer of, because it's kind of like it layered like an onion. Take off the outer layer and then go rinse out whatever dirt's left. So now that the leek is washed off, I'll start cutting it up the way that I usually do, which is cutting it in half and then sitting it down and slicing it into small slices. Leek has its own aroma to it when you're cooking, and it just tastes good to me. I don't know. Not quite like an onion, or celery or anything. Yeah, it's its own thing. And in case you haven't noticed, I have no official cooking training. Therefore, as you can see while I'm cutting here, I'm probably not cutting it like any chef you've ever seen. Because, well, you know, I guess what you'd call, I'm an amateur chef. But, you know, it's, cooking is just something you either natural at it or you learn it, or as with anything. So I tend to learn things by doing them. It's just tomato. So I'll just dice up the tomato, or not dice, maybe just, since these are cherry tomatoes, yeah, I think I'll do halves. That's part of just not following a recipe. You just kind of do whatever you want. So whatever comes to mind, so I just decided just now to cut them in half as opposed to quarters or some other way, or not cutting them up at all. And yes, since you're dealing with sharp knives, you probably want to be careful not to cut yourself. So since we're doing fajitas, if you've ever had fajitas before, you know how it usually shows up on some sizzling skillet, and how the peppers and onions are cut in certain ways, which you, so that's kind of, since we're making fajitas, I'm going to cut the peppers and onions up in that style, which is like so. Of course, you know, you can do whatever you want. If this ends up being too large for whoever it is you're cooking for, you can always dice them up smaller pieces. But I like doing it this way, so that's what I'm going to do. And so let's see, here's the bell pepper. poblano. A lot of the peppers, whether you want the seeds or not is up to you, but the whole center thing is kind of, yeah, you don't eat, I don't know anybody that eats that part, but, you know, that's up to you, I guess. You've had these before. But I cut those out, and I just cut it up just like a bell pepper, which it kind of looks like, right? I mean, gee, look at that. It looks just like what I just cut up. It's just darker. So, this is a poblano pepper, I believe. You know, I just grab random peppers at the store. Or whatever I happen to be growing in the garden. So, one place I love getting fresh vegetables is the farmer's market. Even if I'm not getting anything, just browsing around is fun. But it's a great place. The one here in Olympia is awesome. It's got lots of different organic farms selling their garden vegetables, and it's just a fun experience and a great source of food. So yeah, so that's where a lot of these ingredients are from. So now that all the vegetables are chopped up, the other thing with the fajitas is how all the spices that you throw in there. So when I cook it in the cast iron skillet, I use olive oil, which each of these jars is olive oil, and but all of these are different spices that I throw in there, and I know it looks like a lot, but you know it just tastes great. So what? So we got garlic. You can use fresh garlic if you want. I tend to use garlic powder because it's easier. The crushed red pepper flakes, chili powder, which this is extra chili powder. I like getting it. Some of these things, I found it so much cheaper buying it without in the jars, and I just reuse the jars. It's great. Anyway, so next is basil, cumin, cayenne pepper, oregano, and thyme. I put different amounts in. You can adjust it to whatever your tastes are. If you don't like spicy hot, you probably don't want the hot peppers that are in there. The cayenne, or these two things. The other stuff isn't so hot, but it really adds to the flavor of the fajitas. So I suggest using them all, but if you can't, you can't. So now we're going to start cooking, which I cook in a cast iron skillet. Put some of the freshly opened bottle. Pour it in. Just a little bit. You end up throwing in more later. Turn on. You don't have to turn it up too high. It's just like medium high. Let it heat up a little bit. Pan does get hot. That's why I have this thing here. So why I'm using the cast iron skillet has to do with one of the other things that I picked up from my cancer experience is the doctors would say they couldn't tell where it came from. You know, there's 1,000 different possibilities, but which one? Who knows? So, or maybe all of them, who knows? So, one had to do with Teflon coated pans. So I don't use Teflon coated pans anymore because eventually it starts to flake off. It's also why I don't like using plastic spatulas anymore because they melt. I mean, do you want that in your food? No. So, yeah, cast iron, it's cast iron, but you just have to take care of it. It has its own method of taking care of it, which, you know, you can look up directions on that. So while the pan's heating up, don't have to wait till it's sizzling hot, which you can if you want, but it just adjusts the time frame of the rush of throwing everything in, because you've got a lot of jars of spices here. That takes time to throw all that in. So if you got it so it's cooking so fast, you're not going to be able to throw in all the spices by the time, so you end up overdoing it anyway. So I'm going to start with the first ingredient, which is going to be the zucchini. Gosh, this looks so good. I can already smell the olive oil cooking in there. God, it smells good. And one thing you'll know about cooking this, or you'll notice, is it is very fragrant. Of course, kind of hard to notice with all the spices sitting there, but yeah, one of my favorite smells is, well, besides this, is cooking onions with mushrooms and bell pepper together. Just cooking that up, just, oh gosh, this smells so good. Anyway. So, toss that in there. Make sure they're not like that, but more on their sides. This all stuck together, break it apart. Just kind of get them so they all cook evenly, and so this takes a few minutes for them to soften up a little bit, and then after they've cooked for a few minutes, then we throw in this other stuff along with the spices. So I try flipping them over, see if they got a little brownish there, like they're starting to become done. And then I know it's time to start throwing in this other stuff. Then I know it's time to start throwing in the other vegetables, which right now is going to be the majority of what's in the bowl, minus what falls on the floor. Mushrooms, the onions, all the peppers, the stem part of the bok choy. And the other reason why I'm using a pan so large is because you see it fills up with all this stuff. But after it starts cooking, it starts to shrink and it doesn't look so enormous. Bok choy out of here. I guess that's one issue with putting everything in the same bowl, is having to pick and choose. But, you know what? It's all good. Because all this stuff you can eat without cooking it anyway, so adding the flavor and everything else makes it awesome. Okay. Now, start putting in different spices. And since you notice I'm not using a measuring spoon, I'm just dumping it all in, because partly because I've done this so many times, but it's also a matter of what your tastes are. And it's something that you learn as you go. If you're wondering what this is, it's chili powder. I just happen to get too much to fit in the jar. Use what's in the bag first. Open! Hurry, hurry, hurry! Stop squeaking! Maybe a little more. Yeah, one of the women that was at the potluck, I didn't know she couldn't eat spicy food at all. I still feel bad. She started eating some and it's like, it tasted really good. She couldn't handle the spice. So I guess knowing your audience is a good thing. In here. Good. Partly when you're dumping everything out of the jars into the hot pan that's steaming, is the steam will make whatever it is you're dumping in there stick to the lid or whatever. So you just have to be aware of that. And if you happen to see stuff on the top, to just brush it off, because you don't want the moisture inside the jar, because it ends up making your spices go bad seeming. This is the oregano. Probably should have been telling you that what I'm dumping in here as I'm doing it. So let's see, I put in garlic, red pepper flakes, chili powder, basil, cumin, cayenne pepper, oregano, and now a little bit of thyme. Black pepper. And now that all that's there, you can start stirring it up. Mixed in. The other tricky part when you got so much in here is, stuff likes to fall out of the sides. Leave that up to you whether you want to follow the 5-second rule or not. I tend not to unless my stove top's really clean. But each to their own. So now I'm going to put a little more olive oil in. Just looks like it needs it. Just a little bit. And wait for stuff to soften up. This can take anywhere up to 5 minutes or so. It's really a matter of watching and adjusting as you go. I guess if you've done this several times, you'll know how long it takes, but this is only the second time I've been doing this particular recipe. I guess you can set your timer and see how long it takes. Of course, I've already started, but anyway, you can figure it out. Okay, now that the peppers, etc., look like they've been cooking or softened up, you can see how the pan has got more space to it than it did before. It's because the different vegetables in here soften up and they shrink. It also leaves more room, and now we get to put in the rest of the ingredients. Actually, minus the leaves. Those go in last because they only take like 30 seconds to a minute. Not yet, you. So stir those in. Don't really, probably overdid it on the spices. But mixing these in there, you don't have to add any more of the spice. So just stir it all in. Let that start cooking the leeks and tomato. And that should take a few minutes. And after that's done, then we throw in the leaves, and that'll be a few more minutes. And what's left? Now that the ingredients in the pan look like they're pretty much cooked, you can throw in the leaves from the bok choy. Mix those in. Try not to burn yourself when you do it, because the pan's hot. And let's just realize one last thing that just seems to be missing. There's a whole lot of steam. So, not that it's not steaming. So I will get some water, just a little bit, doesn't need much. Pour it in there. I'll start to sizzle up real quick. The pan's hot. And pouring in the water kind of turns the spices into more like a sauce too, once it thickens. Yeah, sure, it's just water, but anyway, there's enough of the spices in there that it turns into a sauce. So, pretty much done. We'll give it another 30 seconds. So, hope you guys like what it looks like. I think it looks good. It smells amazing with all the different flavors in there. And you see how the leaves have already like kind of shriveled up. Doesn't take them long to cook at all. Kind of looks like spinach, but it's not. It's bok choy. And now we are done. Stove. Find yourself a dish to put it in, unless you want to leave it in the pan, but heavy. And, set it into the pan you want to put it in, or the plate or whatever. Not to miss. By the way, the cast iron skillet like this is heavy. And there it is. Ready to eat. So the last thing there is after cooking all this is heating up the tortillas however you wish to do it, which you can do it in a small dry skillet, not that one that I just cooked with, but a different one, and heat them up for like 30 seconds, flip them over, and they'll be nice and warm and taste yummy. Or you can heat them up in some other way, or just don't heat them up at all. It all works. So, so I've already heated up tortillas and put it in my tortilla warmer here. So, then now it's all ready to eat. So, doesn't this look wonderful? Here's all the different toppings, or traditional types of toppings that you can have on fajitas. And people always put whatever it is they want on them, so I'm going to pick one of these tortillas. I happen to like flour over corn. And how I do it is I'll throw in some cheese first, because then it melts it to the tortilla. And then I'll put on the fajita mix. Grab different types of things, like a tomato, maybe some mushroom, onion. I have a tendency to overfill these things too, so, you know. What is it? My eyes are bigger than my mouth or something like that. Anyway, so you can put a little lime over the food as well. This part. And then some guacamole. I love guacamole. And all of these things are organic, by the way. You can find them at the store or the farmer's market, or if you're industrious enough, you can make it yourself. I guess that'll be a different video, right? So, some sour cream and salsa. Oh gosh, this looks so good. I can't wait to eat. And a little lettuce at the top. Roll it together. Stick the back end in so stuff doesn't fall out the bottom. And then eat away. And thank you for joining us today, and I hope your thoughtful experiment with creating vegan fajitas goes as well as mine. Welcome everyone to Food for Thought. I don't cook from a... No, I'm not going to say that part. Hello aspiring chefs. Oh God. Blank. Hello aspiring chefs. This is Food for Thought, where I will be cooking... I'm not even looking at it! I will be your host. My name is Cris-Jon Lindsay, and I will be your host. My name is Cris-Jon Lindsay. What got me to eating more... I found myself overweight and great. Can't wait to eat. Looks so yummy.